Welcome to Jesus Listens Stories of Prayer. I'm Susie McIntyre, and I'm excited to share this conversation with you today. We're joined by Dr. Henry Cloud. He's the co-writer of the book Boundaries. This book still makes the bestseller list after over 20 years and has changed countless lives. Today we're talking to Dr. Cloud about his latest work. It's a devotional to know him, and he's going to share some personal stories from that book and how we can find joy even when life is hard. Dr. Cloud, it's such a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to, first of all, be in your presence via video and audio. But I tell you, I have heard about your work for a long time from my husband. I just want to say thank you for the work that you have done in your life. What is it in your life that helped you write Boundaries? Why did you do that?
I had written a book called Changes That Heal, and that was my first book. It was about 4 big developmental steps that get broken in us that cause all of our symptoms and how faith restores us. Well, the second one of the 4 is boundaries. God has created us. He's created us with the deepest construct is love and connection, but that requires the second one, which is freedom. There's no love without freedom. That book was really to show how the gospel affects areas of life that clinical psychologists deal with. You know, we deal with clinical issues, depression, anxiety, fears, loss of energy, addictions, trauma, all that, and the relational aspect of life and the performance aspect of life. When I became a psychologist, extremely, and disenchanted is too light a word, but extremely disenchanted with the Christian models that existed that were giving answers to those problems. And so what people would do, they wouldn't get help with that stuff. So they'd go over to therapy, and it was like, you have an emotional problem, you go see the Christian counselor. You got a spiritual problem, you go to the pastor. The gospel and faith and spiritual growth should absolutely affect our clinical lives, our relational lives, our performance lives. So I went on a mission, setting all of that stuff aside to just see what the Bible said.
And I so want people to get your point that you don't separate our lives here from our Christian life. It's all our life. God created us in one human being, and we can't separate our emotional, verbal, mental capacities with our spiritual.
Everybody's life is like a pie, in my view. And there's 3 big slices to your life, the pie of your life. Number 1 is the clinical piece. The second piece is our relationships, and the third piece is our performance, how we're reaching our dreams and goals and becoming fruitful with our talents. And so I'll draw that pie on a whiteboard sometimes, and the immediate question, well, where's the spiritual piece? And I go, there is no spiritual piece. The whole pie is spiritual.
I've read that you went through quite a depression in college, even. And when you were growing up and you got into high school, and everybody was saying, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Henry, with your life?"
I grew up a competitive golfer, was recruited to play golf in college, and that was my dream. Like 0.01% of the people actually make it, but it was still a
Yeah.
dream. But then I also thought that if I couldn't play, I'd be a club professional because I loved the game, and that's how I want to spend my life. I thought maybe I'll go to law school because I enjoyed all of that, but that's where I was headed. And then in
Yeah.
college, I had a wrist injury early on, didn't play well, a lot of pain. After 2 years, I had to quit, and that's when I got
Yeah.
severely depressed.
That changed your whole trajectory of your life.
What happened was I got severely depressed, had a breakup with a girlfriend at the same time, and my life dream was over, and I had to drop out of school for a semester. And in that time period, God stepped in, and I went through, all the healing process. I thought at that point, I'm going to go to seminary and become a pastor. But then God clearly said, no, you're not. You're going into psychology. I was a business major. So I had to change my major
Oh,
because
wow.
I felt that's what God was telling me to go into
Mhm.
this field. So I just followed his lead, and here we are.
Where do boundaries come in those hard times? How does that help us?
Promise of is boundaries are a property line. Okay, you have a boundary around your house or your apartment that says, this is me. This is what I own or rent, and I have the rights to it. This is what I own, and I take ownership of this property. And everybody else is my neighbors, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, ownership, having the rights to something, means that you have two things: control, actually, three things. Freedom, it's yours. You can do what you
Mhm.
want, as long as you don't step over the fence and trespass. You have control of that property, okay?
Mhm.
And you have responsibility. You own it. So if it's going to be a mess or if it's going to be great, that's up to you. And see, when people understand their boundaries, what they have control of and what they don't, when hard times come, then they realize, they say, what can I take control of? What can I own?
Mhm.
What do I have the freedom to do with whatever I've been dealt? And they thrive. Well, you've got a lot of choices that you can make that can get you where you want to go. You always have control of yourself and the choices and how you respond.
There's a boundary around us, and we have the choice of what we let through that.
And our choices are going to really determine, you know, a lot of what happens. You can play in this yard, but if you step over that fence and eat of that one,
Yeah.
you will incur the consequences. And that's
Yes.
what boundaries are about,
Yes.
making the choices so we have better consequences in our lives.
And that's what children should be taught very, very early in their lives. There is a consequence to what you do.
We have got to learn to respect no as well as say no, and then
Yes.
experience the consequences.
Yeah.
Consequences are one of the most empowering things there is in life. What boundaries do in a bad relationship, if somebody is an addict, for example, and the partner finally, whether it's a family member or a friend or whoever it is, husband, wife, when they finally stand up and say, I am not going, I can't stop you from drinking, but I can self control. I can keep myself from being affected by this. So if you choose to continue drinking, I won't be living here anymore. That's a consequence. And then the addict finally, a lot of times, goes, oh, I better change because I don't like the consequences of losing my family. God has built that into the universe, and it's one of the best laws we have. I
Yes.
need money. I don't have any money. I better go work. I work,
Right.
I get money. That's a good consequence.
I hope that really helps some of our listeners today to realize that consequences are not bad, they are good. There are boundaries in our life where we have to abide by those to be able to live in this world. How do we not only survive but find joy in a world full of suffering and disappointment? I hear people say, why does God let all this happen? And how do we survive but find joy in this world today?
Okay, so we are in a broken world. Jesus said, "In this world you have tribulation, but take courage, I have overcome the world." Now that's an easy little platitude, but when you lose a kid or you have cancer or you've been abused, there aren't any easy little answers to that. I would say the first thing is to really get connected with, certainly with God, and rail at him. I mean, tell him how bad it is. He wants to
Yes.
hear that and he will
Yes.
respond to that. But you're not meant, Paul said, God who comforts the depressed did what? sent verses to me. No, he said, God who comforts the depressed sent Titus to me. And he writes so many times when he was despairing, I was refreshed by your coming. So you have got to get some arms around you and with some people that can help you. And then you got to unravel, what's causing this. And a lot of times it's external factors. It is. It's a disease, it's a loss,
Mm-hmm.
it's whatever it is. And you can't, and you're hurting because of that. And you got to be around people that understand
Mm-hmm.
that there is healing for that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
First Thessalonians says, heal the brokenhearted. There is heartbreak, but there's healing for that. And God has given us a system that responds, and trauma and loss and all of that can be worked through. He has wired us for grief, and it's got to be flushed out and it's got to be cried out. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever noticed, he put your tear ducts in your eyes, not under your arm where you can spray a little anti-tearant where nobody will know or smell them, right?
Right.
He put them in your eyes because your pain has to be seen. And when that happens, we can hook people up to a brain scan. And when they're receiving care and empathy and understanding of
Mm-hmm.
their pain, the trauma starts to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to flush it out. But you need support. And you're probably going to have to maybe learn some new skills that you didn't have before. Depending on what's going on, if somebody's abused, their boundaries have been traumatized. And I've never met an abuse victim who who didn't have to have their boundaries restored because their basic body boundary has been annihilated, like the walls in Nehemiah. They've got to be rebuilt. And so we need people to help you rebuild, and then there's always some work to do. But do not believe the lie that's from the pit that there is no future, there is no hope. All of that is a lie. And if you don't have other voices in the room, they're going to take over.
Dr. Cloud, where can we find you, and where can we find your books, or where could we maybe hear you speak?
If they go to drcloud.com, my website, and you'll scroll down, you'll see something called boundaries.me. Click on there, and there's a platform where I have over 100 courses on all of these topics that we've talked about. And there's a lot to visit there.
You have given so much back of a wonderful bank of knowledge that you have, and I know through the years you've just accumulated and put that knowledge back and used it for other people. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today with Dr. Henry Cloud. I know I did. He was counseling me in the midst of what he was saying. So my prayer is that it would speak to your heart as well. We always end our episode of Jesus Listens, Stories of Prayer from the book Jesus Listens. And today we're reading out of July 27th. Wonderful Savior, how thankful I am to be a child of God. Someday I will see you as you are. I'll be face to face with you in glory. Now, however, I am in training, putting on the new self and being made new in the attitude of my mind. Although my new self is being conformed to your image, I'm thankful that this process doesn't erase the essence of who I am. On the contrary, the more I become like you, the more I develop into the unique person you created me to be. When I go through hard times, help me turn to you and find you lovingly present with me in my trouble. Please enable me to suffer well, in a manner worthy of your royal household. I realize that everything I endure can train me to become more like you. The psalmist describes my ultimate goal superbly. I will see your face in righteousness and be satisfied. In your regal name, Jesus. Amen.